My guest tonight is a senator from Wisconsin, and unlike most, he's not a career politician. As a kid, he worked as a fry cook. He went to night school to get his MBA, and he started a business, one that actually hired people. So this is a guy who's actually had to balance budgets, and he says Washington should operate more like a business. Senator Ron Johnson, welcome.
Hello, Edie. Thanks for having me on.
Well, first off, I look at this, I think like a lot of Americans, I've got to go home, and if I don't pay the phone bill, the phone gets cut off. If I don't pay the mortgage, I get kicked out. If you don't pay the electricity, the lights don't go on. How come Washington seems to think they can stop paying any kind of bill or not have enough money to pay it and just keep on spending?
Because there's never been any limits here in Washington, which is why we're facing a debt that's almost equal to the size of our economy, $14.3 trillion. And Edie, my objection to this process that's being conducted behind closed doors isn't about the election. It's just not a way to conduct business here.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact of the matter is we're talking about a $3.7 trillion a year budget, and that is not something that should be conducted in, decided on in the course of a couple meetings between a few people. This is something that should have been worked on for months in detail, fully vetted through the committee process. It should have gone through the regular order, a process where the American people could see what's happening, what's being proposed.
They haven't done that. I mean, you and I talked about this last week, and you said to me, this is absolutely shameful that they're doing it this way. But this is Washington. This is kind of the pig we're stuck with right now. So you've come up with an idea. You've got a plan to keep the sky from falling in, and you call it your debt ceiling budget. How does that work?
Well, it's really not a plan in terms of actually trying to live under it. All I was trying to point out is the administration, I believe, has been incredibly irresponsible, trying to scare the American people, trying to scare the markets. And all I was trying to point out is it wouldn't have to be a crisis if they weren't scaremongering. It wouldn't have to be a crisis if you actually planned on living within your means for a short while until you actually structurally fixed our federal budget. But I mean, the problem here is this business as usual in Washington is bankrupting America. And we've got to stop conducting business as usual. We need to start living within our means. And there's actually a pretty simple solution. The House is working on it right now. It's called cut, cap, and balance. You cut a little bit of spending off of the next couple of years' budget. You pass a law that puts caps, puts us on a glide path toward establishing a balanced budget. And then you actually increase the debt ceiling, but it's contingent on sending a constitutional amendment to the states, to the American people, to balance our budget. Bottom line, let's let the American people decide if we want this fiscal discipline. I think the American people would decide to put discipline here in Washington.
Well, I'm with you because I like fiscal discipline. I like people spending only as much as they can afford to. However, I also recognize that we're in a very difficult situation right now. So some folks would say, look, the concept is great. However, at this point when we're trying to create jobs, when we're trying to figure out how to get ourselves out of this economic nightmare, we can't afford to have all those cuts right now, especially in programs. More people are dependent on them. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, what people are talking about, even the Paul Ryan budget, only cuts about $89 billion in the first year. The Toomey budget cuts a little over $100 billion. That's about 2% of our entire federal budget. I mean, in the business, if you ask a department head to cut 2% off their budget, they won't even break a sweat doing that. So when you hear about all these huge cuts, all we're really talking about is reducing the rate of growth in spending. The president's budget goes from about $3.7 trillion up to about $5.7 trillion over 10 years. That would add $12 trillion to our debt in 10 years. The Ryan budget goes from about $3.5 trillion up to about $4.7. You're still increasing spending. You're just doing it at a slower rate.
Okay, so, but what you're saying, what you're presenting there sounds reasonable. If it is so reasonable as you make it appear, why haven't they agreed on anything?
It is reasonable. They haven't agreed on anything because it's business as usual in Washington. And let's face it, the Democrats want to defend all of their spending. They like the fact that the federal government right now spends 25 cents of every dollar of our economy. They want to defend that. What we're saying is let's cap spending over a long period of time. Nobody's talking about cutting off the government and going to a balanced budget immediately, but over a glide path, let's say 10 years, bring spending down to our long-term revenue generation percentage of about 18 to 19%. That's how you create a balanced budget. That's how you live within your means. I think that's the type of spending discipline certainly I was sent here to enforce on Washington. I believe the American people would support that. And all we're saying is, Mr. President, We'll increase your debt ceiling as you've requested. Just work with us to pass a constitutional amendment to the states and let the people decide. I think that's pretty reasonable. That could be done very quickly. We wouldn't have to worry about talking about a crisis.
All right, Senator Johnson, thank you very much. We're going to get on the frequent speaking program, I guess, because we've been talking about this budget so much. I like talking to you. I'm hoping this thing gets done soon, though.
So do I, Edie. So do I.
All right, thank you very much.